Osho has said about the commoners, including the commonly spiritual people, to avoid pain, they avoid pleasure. To avoid death, they avoid life. You see, the game of duality has to be clearly understood. If you don't understand, then many mistakes can happen. A very prevalent mistake is to think that if you stick to one end of duality, you can permanently stay there or stay there at least for a considerable length of time without having to go to the other end. The mind likes pleasure, and so it wants to believe that there must be some way of remaining in pleasure without having to experience pain. This kind of mind becomes a pleasure maximizer. We all have seen this mind, have we not? In everything that it does, there is an intention to get more pleasure, and there is a hope that pleasure can be sustained uninterrupted, that pain is not a necessary accompaniment of pleasure, that it is possible to break the dualistic relationship between pain and pleasure. It is obvious that such people suffer. They suffer because, like everything else in consciousness, pleasure too can be experienced only in backdrop of something, only in contrast to something. In fact, having pleasure necessitates having pain. There is no other way to maximize pleasure. If there is no pain, you cannot have any consciousness of pleasure. Consciousness itself proceeds only by contrasting, only in a relative way. If there is nothing to compare a situation with, the situation does not exist for the consciousness. the entire existence exists only in a relative way. A thing exists in relation to its surrounding, its background. To test this, ask yourself, have you ever seen anything without a background? For the background to be there, the thing must end somewhere. That is the meaning of background. The ending of the thing is its background. There is this television set on the wall there. You can look at it only in the background of the wall. Whenever you would look at the set, you would also look at the boundaries of the set, and where the boundaries are, there the background begins. The thing relative to which the TV is seen begins. Pleasure too is a mental object like the television. Pleasure too is a thing of thought like the television. Pleasure too can be seen only in the backdrop of something. No backdrop, no thing. In the sky, you can look at a bird because the bird contrasts with the sky. But if there is absolutely nothing in the sky, absolutely nothing, you cannot even detect the sky. Your normal experience is that you detect the sky. That is because there are a few things in the sky. There is a particular color in the sky. And there is the horizon where the sky ends and the earth begins. So in contrast to the boundary, the earth, you start saying that that particular thing up there is called the sky. Had there been nothing but the sky, empty space everywhere, 360 degrees, with nothing to contrast it with, you would not have been able to detect it. Pleasure too is there only when pain is there. In fact, the demand for pleasure is the highest when pain is there. And the pleasure is the sweetest when it comes on the backdrop of pain. You are rushing to the railway station. The train is to leave at 7 a.m. and it is already 7:20. You were to leave for an important meeting. And you are becoming quite sure that you would have now missed the train. There is sadness, tension, anxiety. It's already 7:20. The train would have left. The mind, as is its habit, is already beginning to plan what to do next, what to do with the meeting, how to explain the lapse to those you are going to meet, how to set up a new meeting time. How bad would it be to apologize? How expensive would it be to buy a fresh ticket or to take a flight? The mind is already doing all these things. The mind is heavy. You know that you have missed the train. With heavy steps, you walk towards your designated platform. And there you find that the train is still there, just about to leave. Can you imagine your pleasure? You had already calculated the mental costs, the financial costs of having missed the train. You'd have to set up a new meeting, you'd have to explain, apologize, you'd have to buy a fresh ticket, you'd have to wait. And here, now, none of that is needed. You can simply board the train using your existing ticket. Can you see the pleasure that you will get? Would you get this pleasure had you come at 6:45 and simply boarded the train? Would this pleasure be available? 6:45 you come like any other punctual guy and just hop on to the train. Now there is no fun because there is no tension. The tension that you experience, the frustration that you live in, becomes the background against which pleasure will be visible. If that frustration is not there, there is no pleasure associated in boarding a train. You getting it? That tells you of the only way to maximize pleasure. Create tension in life. The deeper is your frustration, the deeper will be the orgasmic and occasional spasms of pleasure that you will experience. Keep yourself frustrated, totally bottled up, and then once a week, when you allow a release, it will be very pleasuresome. Remain caged for the entire week, and then allow yourself some flight, some free sky for 2 hours on a Saturday. It will be very pleasuresome. There is no other way to get pleasure. Not possible. One cannot breach the laws of duality, the laws of consciousness. Someone who says that he can have pleasure without pain is attempting the impossible. The very design of the mind does not allow that. If you see someone very happy, you can rest assured that he has been through terrible sadness. In fact, it is the same mental excitation that sometimes comes to be known as happiness and sometimes as sadness. Just as pleasure necessitates pain, similarly, pain needs pleasure for it to survive or happen. You are sure that you are going to get 90% marks. You are already celebrating. The pleasure is there. You have already imagined. You have already visualized. Your thought has already convinced you that something good is going to happen. And your neighbor is not so sure about his result. He admits that he did not write the papers very well. And not being sure, he gets no ground for any kind of premature celebration. You are already confident and ecstatic. The results are declared and both of you get 75% marks. Now, who is going to experience pain? Both of you have gone through seemingly the same objective event. Both have obtained 75%. If both have obtained the same marks, the condition of both ought to be roughly the same. But you would find that one of the two is terribly disappointed, in pain, about to weep. Which one? The one who was already in pleasure. The one who was feeling the pleasure of the fulfillment of expectations. Pain too rests on pleasure, and all pleasure therefore is a preparation for pain. So pleasure, first of all, requires pain as a forerunner, as a backdrop. And pleasure also gives way to pain. These keep alternating. Are you getting? The pleasure seekers are always going to be disappointed. There would be pain before pleasure and there would be pain after pleasure. One thing also must be seen clearly, so that all our fascination with pleasure is tested properly. Even in the moment of pleasure, there is pain about the security of pleasure. We had said that there is pain before pleasure and there is pain after pleasure. But even in pleasure, because deeply somewhere you already know that pleasure is transitory, fleeting, deceptive, even in the moment of pleasure, you are afraid about protecting the pleasure. Intuitively you know, and also experience has taught you that pleasure never stays, or that you have to work to prolong pleasure. So even in the moment of pleasure, you cannot relax. In fact, when pleasure is there, then relaxation becomes impossible, because by your own standards, you now have something valuable. You wanted pleasure, you got it. Look at your condition. You were desperate for something, you got it, but the thing that you have obtained, just obtained, does not quite belong to you. It is not going to stay with you. You know that. Now look at your condition. What you have in your hands is valuable, but what you have in your hands is quickly slipping away. You cannot rest or relax. You are worried about its security. You know that it is going to disappear and you want to consume it fully before it disappears. These are the two things you want. One, you want its stay to be prolonged. Second, in the while where it stays, you want to consume it fully. And you would always see these two kinds of behavior in pleasure seekers. First, they want to consume pleasure fully and with desperation. It is like being seated in front of a large thali that has 20 different kinds of delicacies beautifully placed on it. You are craving for this thali. But now that the thali has come to you, you have been told that every 30 seconds, one delicacy is going to disappear. Which one you do not even know. And you have also been told that at the end of the 5th minute, the entire thali would disappear. And everything that is there on the thali is extremely dear to your taste buds. You have worked for the thali. You have paid a huge price to come to that. Now, can you visualize what you would be doing? You would be desperately consuming one thing after the other. And even as you would be consuming, you would be afraid, worried, insecure. One hand would be in the mouth, the other hand would be in the bowl, and the third hand would be on the heart. Even as your mouth is stuffed with curry, you find that dal is disappearing and your mouth can hold no more. It is already full and you see that it is going. The curry is disappearing. And what do? You stretch your hand out, grab the curry and force it in. Now even if your mouth starts hurting and burning, still you have to do it. That is the situation of pleasure seekers. You have gone to the hill station for 2 days. 2 days are all that your slavish life can allow you. If Monday morning you do not report back to work, then you have hell waiting for you. So 2 days are all that you have. In these 2 days, you totally want to consume the hill. And even as you are visiting one tourist spot, you recognize that it is nearing 5 p.m. and the gates of the next one would be closed. So what do? You rush in and then you rush out with double the speed. And then you rush to the other place. Bhaiya, can we just have a glimpse? Okay, can you keep it open for 1 minute so that I may have a selfie and at least claim that I came here? This is the situation of pleasure seekers. They very well know that time is slipping, pleasure is slipping. They only have 2 days to consume pleasure. And had they had 20 years to consume, the hill station would have lost its appeal and novelty for them. In fact, the hill station appears attractive only because you come there for 2 days. Only because you come there after having suffered much throughout the week. If you could permanently stay there, then that condition would not be called pleasure. That would be a totally different thing, which we may come to a while later. So this thing will always be found in the pleasure seekers. They would be consuming rapidly and rapidly. And their consumption would be so indignified. Like a man who is gorging food in with both hands. Some reaching his insides through the nose, some on the beard, and a lot that is dyeing his clothes. That is a part of pleasure. It leaves its stains on you. It leaves its marks on you. It does not leave you clean. Have you seen how pleasure seekers are particular after their moments of pleasure? Make sure no stains are left. Baby, watch out. There is something there. You would want to consume because you know your time is limited. And that is why all consumerism is based upon suffering. All consumerism is based on the foundation that your time is limited and you must have it, experience it, swallow it before you pass away. At the base of consumerism lies fear. At the base of consumerism lies a constant and terrible recognition of your frailty and mortality. So he would consume and he would play all kinds of tricks to prolong the pleasure. Getting it? And even this consumption and these tricks and the attempt to prolong are all fear. They are all fear. So there is pain before pleasure, after pleasure, and even during pleasure. That is why, even though cycles of pain and pleasure alternate, but if one were to say that life is half pleasure and half pain, that would not really be true. Because pain is pain, and even pleasure is pain. Had pleasure and pain been equal in the duration or the intensity of their presence, Buddha might have as well said life is pleasure, but he only said life is suffering. If suffering were equal in quality and quantity to pleasure, then he could have said life is suffering and life is pleasure, or life is suffering or life is pleasure. No. Pain is pain, and even pleasure is pain. So he had to put it very crisply, bluntly, life is suffering. Life is suffering. Getting it? These are the kind of people who live in the illusion that pleasure can be had without pain. Only after paying a heavy price, the price is a wasted life itself, do they realize that their fundamental assumption about the nature of pain and pleasure was flawed. Sometimes they may not recognize even after wasting their entire life. Then there are the people of a second category. They probably read somewhere or come to know from some source that pain and pleasure are linked. So their mind suggests them a clever solution. Their problem is that they have suffered a lot at the hands of suffering, and they have suffered a lot at the hands of pleasure. The solution that they imagine is that if they give up on both pleasure and pain, then they have given up on suffering. These include a lot of spiritual people, a lot of renunciates. They have seen that pain is pain and pleasure is also pain. So they say, I will give up all pain, which means I will give up pain and pleasure both. In their own mind, they have probably come upon a clever solution. They are saying, see, we have escaped. We have escaped from pleasure and we have also escaped from pain. And now we are free of suffering. What they do not see is that freedom and escape are two very, very different things. Escape always involves fear, and where there is fear, there is always something at stake, always an attachment. If you are escaping, you are afraid. And if you are afraid, then how have you avoided suffering? Life and its experiences are the only door to the truth. And you have closed all the doors. Doors of all experiences. Experiences of all colors. Experiences of pain, pleasure. Experiences of winning, losing. Reaching. Journeying. White, black, good, bad. You have locked yourself up in a protective cell, which is as bad as being locked in a jail. How does it matter whether you have locked yourself up or somebody else has? You are locked. You're locked in. You're not allowing life to touch you. You are so afraid. And if you are so afraid, how can you deceive yourself? How can you tell yourself that you are not suffering? Look at the contradiction. On one hand, you have confined yourself within a protective cocoon. On the other hand, you are saying, now I am free. You are saying, now I am liberated. There is neither pleasure nor pain. The greatest liberation is always liberation from fear. And where there is fear, necessarily there is pain. So your claim is hollow. Right? Escape is not freedom. If you have escaped away from something, the thing is still in your mind. How are you free from that thing? If you have escaped away from something, that thing is still the center you are operating from. You are saying, I am running away from that thing. Now, physically, you might have come a little distance away from the thing, but mentally you are still carrying it. Even if mentally you are carrying it in the statement that I am no more carrying it. Even if mentally you are making the statement, I am now free of my responsibility or obligation or house or neighbor or wife, still what are you saying? Who is the object in your thoughts? You are still thinking of your wife, are you not? Earlier you were saying, you know what? I am a slave to her. Now, who is there in your thoughts? And now you are saying, you know what? Now I am free of her. Who is there in your thoughts? But thought can dress up as a great consolation. And man likes to console himself through thought. What is freedom then? Freedom then is to let everything be free to be itself. And nothing violates the other, nothing overrides the other. There is the periphery of life, and the periphery remains at the periphery. There is the center of life, and the center remains the center. Neither do you artificially extend or stretch the silence of the center upon the periphery, nor do you impose the movement and the noise of the periphery upon the center. All remain free in their own place. This is freedom. Everything is what it must be. Everything is where it must be. The temple is there. And in the heart of the temple, in the sanctum sanctorum, there is total silence. And outside, a few kids are playing. They are busy in their game. There is a lot of movement, chatter, noise, childishness, winning, losing, remembering, forgetting, running, touching, falling, rising. A lot of them that is there at the periphery, near the walls of the temple, at the boundary, at the circumference. These kids are playing. And the presiding deity is resting in his deep sleep, deep samadhi at the center of the temple. The deity is not coming out to silence the kids. The deity is all right with the kids. And the kids are not rushing in and violating the silence of the deity. The kids are playing where they should play. And the deity is in the deepest meditation where he should be. This is freedom. You are free to do what your nature is, and I am free to do what my nature is. Neither will I impose myself upon you, nor am I suffering because you encroached upon my space. The mind does what the mind must do. The mind remains engaged in life. The mind remains in thoughts. The mind experiences. And the center remains where the center must remain. A non-experiencer, a non-mover, a watcher. A silent presence. That is the center. Now pain and pleasure, the twin kids, they keep playing outside. One is wearing a red shirt, the other is wearing a green shirt. They are twins and they are playing outside. the game of pain and pleasure. Experiences are happening. And you are free to experience because at your center you are free as a non-experiencer. The kids are totally free to play outside because they know that they are in the security of the temple. They can experience anything because they know that nothing wrong can happen to them because it is the temple. The temple is their playground. The deity is looking after them. So there can be a fulsome play. The kids don't have to stop intermittently and look around cautiously to determine whether someone might come to admonish them or interrupt their game. They very well know that they have all the authority to play as they want to play. Nobody can come and prevent them from playing. Nobody can come and admonish them in a lesson of morality. They know they are doing nothing wrong. They know they are playing at the right place. They are not violating the temple. And when you do not violate the temple, then you are in the security of the temple. Now you have not been thrown out of the temple will take care of the play. There is a lot of space available. It's a large temple. Open ground, even open courtyards. Keep playing as much as you want to play because the deity is looking after you from the center. Nothing wrong can happen in the temple. It's a place of religion. Kids can play fearlessly. Getting it? This is freedom. Play, but play in the temple. Play, but play under the lordship of the Lord. If you go out and play at other places, there might be danger. Kids might get hurt. Kids might even be taken away. And if nothing else, then someone can come and interrupt their game. But nobody dares to do that within the temple. At the center must be the sanctum sanctorum, the deity. And nobody should be allowed to bring noise to that point. And as long as the heart is just purely silent, the mind can be allowed all its gossip, all its prattle, all its chatter. As long as the heart is absolutely still, the mind can be allowed all its roaming, all its wandering, all pleasure and all pain. Nothing will harm you because now pleasure will be sanctified and pain too will be sanctified. Now you will not be afraid of pleasure and not afraid of pain. There is very little expectation that you now have from pleasure, and now there is equally less expectation from pain. The game is so beautiful. One can keep on losing, but one still wants to play. Now the beauty does not lie in winning, the beauty lies in the game. The temple of the Lord is so beautiful that one can continue playing here even if one is continuously losing. Now pain is no more a threat, no more a nightmare, no more something horrible. Even if there is pain, I am there to purely experience the pain. And in this purity, there is great joy. In this purity, there is great depth. When I go to the depth of all pain, I find that there is something beyond pain. When I was afraid of pain, then I used to resist it so much. The resistance only exacerbated the pain. Now I am no more resisting pain. Because even if pain is there, there is something far bigger than pain that is enveloping me. I am in the precincts of the temple. I am enveloped by the temple, and at the center of the temple is the deity. Who bothers about pain now? And who gives a lot of value to pleasure now? Pain can come, pleasure can come. Both are part of the game of life. I am no more playing to have pleasure. I am no more playing to avoid pain. I am now playing because playing is so beautiful. Just playing is beautiful. This is freedom. Playing is happening at its own place. The non-player, who is also the real player, is comfortably relaxing at his own place. And it is due to his relaxation that everything else is proper. It is due to his central presence that everything else is in order. The temple belongs to him. The world belongs to him. As long as there is the deity at the center of your world, you will be free to experience pleasure and pain both. And when you are free to experience pleasure and pain, it means you are now not identical with either of them. You can go to pleasure and not be stained. You can go to pain and not be stained. The states keep coming and going, but you are located somewhere else. Your heart is with the heart of the temple. Pain does not affect you beyond a point, and pleasure too does not carry you away beyond a point. So without any resistance, you can go into both. Are you getting it? This is what Osho means when he says that those who avoid pain end up avoiding pleasure. And they actually avoid neither. But those who avoid neither this extreme nor that, they get something that is higher than both pain and pleasure. This is the essence of choiceless awareness. This is the essence of Vaivu Vai. This is the essence of action in inaction. And this is also what is total freedom. This is also how the Upanishads describe the Atma or the Self. They say it moves not. Standing still It races ahead of everything. The deity is not merely at the center of the temple. The deity is the center, and the deity is also everywhere in the circle. The deity that you see at the center moves not. The deity that is there at the circumference is the deity that likes to move. Just as you do not want to avoid the deity at the center, you must also not avoid the deity at the periphery. The deity at the periphery comes to you as freedom from all experiences, and the deity at the periphery will come to you as experiences. I repeat, there is deity not merely at the center of the circle. The circle itself is a manifestation of the deity. At the center lies the deity that moves not. At the periphery lies the deity that moves a lot. If you respect the deity at the center, you must also equally respect the deity at the periphery. At the center is the center of life, silent, witnessing. At the periphery is the periphery of life, experiential, moving, changing, full of ups and downs. You must respect and love these just as you respect the center. Because the periphery is just an extension of the center. You cannot respect the center and disrespect the periphery. You cannot respect silence and disrespect all sounds. All sounds have silence as their source. You cannot say that you like freedom but do not like pain and pleasure. All experiences have their basis in freedom. One has to go through all experiences. If you disrespect life, then you are disrespecting the source of life. If you avoid life, then you are avoiding the source of life, because there is no other way to come to the source of life. You have to go through life. You cannot bypass life. You cannot armor yourself against experiences. You cannot start living in a make-believe world. You cannot start holding yourself guilty for laughing. And you cannot start calling yourself weak for crying. The real man, the man of religion, the man devoted to the deity, lives continuously in the presence of the deity. He is never really away from the temple. The temple that I am talking of is the world. And if he is always in the presence of deity, he is always respectful. He is always welcoming. He is always devoted. Which means he is not going to turn away life in any of its colors. Come morning, he welcomes it. Comes evening, he welcomes it. Come the various shades of life, he welcomes them all. And then when death comes, he welcomes death as well. He knows anyway that a little bit of dying, undetected, is happening every moment. He very well knows that nothing in time survives. And if one is so eager for survival, then he will have to give up everything in time. If you are going to be respectful only towards that which survives, then you cannot be respectful towards anything in life, because nothing in life is going to survive. So those who do not want death have to necessarily miss out on life. Not to want death is to say that I do not want that which brings to an end. To avoid death is to avoid everything that comes to an end. But if you look around in your life, everything is going to come to an end. So if you avoid death, really you are avoiding everything in life. And you cannot say that your nature is timelessness, so you do not like time. Time is a product of timelessness. If you are really devoted to the timeless, you will be devoted to everything in time as well. The little is but the game of the infinite. If you really respect the infinite, you will have great respect for the little also. That which comes and goes is but the same as that which neither comes nor goes. So the transitory has to be looked at with the same eye as one looks at the intransitory. Those who do not respect life also do not respect the source of life. If you say that you are avoiding life but you respect God, you are talking nonsense. One becomes non-resistant. Just as you cannot resist God, you also cannot resist life, because life is nothing but God in movement. Would you resist truth? If you cannot resist truth, how do you really intend to resist life? What does it mean to not to resist life? It means to not to have ideas about life. It means to not to approach life with images, with expectations. Life is anyway a flux. Life is anyway a stream. It is anyway continuously with you, over you, below you. You are in the stream. You are the stream. And life is a continuous movement. So you don't have to do anything to welcome life. You just have to not to resist. And that is real religiosity. That is real devotion. To live without ideas. To live without a concept of how things should be. That does not mean that change does not happen. That does not mean that you do not bring about change. Yes, you do bring about change. But all of that change is just superficial on the outside. Deeply, you were never so disturbed that you want to change the essence of things. You know that the essence of things is always alright. So even if something is to be tinkered, even if something is to be reset, it is always on the periphery, superficially. Actually, everything is already alright. Actually, nothing has to be treated, cured or set right. So even if you are to become an agent of change, all that you change is some trivialities. And that change is with due respect to the unchanging. That change then is by the command of the unchanging. That change then is a flow, not a resistance. You see, there are two kinds of changes, and these two kinds of changes are the two kinds of living that is possible. If you look at a stream, it is continuously flowing, hence there is continuous change. And if you look at a rock, it is continuously resisting in attempt to change. Or if you look at a man-made barrier, that too is trying to change by resistance. The river is changing by acceptance. The rock is attempting change by resistance. The rock is saying, well, things are flowing, I want to change the flow. Life is change, and change is of two types: changing through acceptance and changing through resistance. Life is change. You have to decide what kind of life would you lead: a life of non-resistance or a life of resistance. If you lead a life of non-resistance, you would find that you are in the middle of continuous change, but that change is so beautiful, effortless. You won't be tired, you won't feel the burden. You won't say, I have to bring about a change, and if the change doesn't come, then my life is frustrated. Like a river, you would be flowing, continuously changing, doing, moving, attempting, winning, losing, rising, falling, splashing. Like a river, you would be flowing. Or you could be a block. Or you could be a wall. Or you could be a barrier. And you are saying, I will not let life happen. I will become an obstruction to the flow. What kind of life do you want to lead? The river abides in non-resistance. Or do you want to become a rock? A rock that wants to make its presence felt, because it can hinder, because it can block. Don't block. Let the kids play in the courtyard. Don't block them. Let the kids play freely. Don't become a spoil sport. The river is flowing, the kids are playing. It is the same thing. The river is the flow of pain and pleasure. And don't forget the identical twins. They are pain and pleasure. It is the same thing. Don't block them. The river is arising from the Himalayan peaks, right from the forehead of the deity. And the same Shiva sits at the center of the temple. It's the same thing. Don't spoil the river. Don't spoil the sport of the kids. They all are coming from the same place, and that place is sacred. Let the game happen. Let the game happen. All the little pieces that you see in life are not there so that you weep over their littleness. All the little things that you see in life are not there so that you weep over their littleness. They are there so that you can see the infinite in their littleness. Now, either you can keep crying over how everything in life is an illusion, how the world is just a mirage, how nothing sustains, how everything breaches, how every relationship deceives, how nothing is ever sufficient. Either you can keep crying over all these, or you can see the sufficient in the insufficient, the total in the little. Love, even in acrimony. Love, even in a breakup. Love, even in ridicule. Love, even in harshness. If you cannot see the total in the fragment, you will never see the total, because there is no other possibility for you. If you cannot find joy in pleasure, there is no pleasure for you. And equally, if you cannot find joy in pain, you neither know pain nor do you know joy. Joy is not a third state. Joy is not separate from pain and pleasure. There is nothing called a third one or the fourth one. That which you call as joy is at the basis of pleasure and of pain. Go to their base, go to their foundation, go to where they come from, and there you will find joy. You avoid pleasure, you have avoided joy. You avoid pain, you have avoided joy. If you avoid both pain and pleasure, you have doubly avoided joy. Such is the situation of the so-called spiritual people. Not only do they avoid joy, but they doubly avoid joy. And of course, all avoidance will be double, because pleasure and pain are dualistic. You avoid one, you avoid the other as well. You either get it doubly or you lose it doubly. Partial is not possible. To get it doubly, be respectful to the little. To be respectful to something is to admit it as it is, to not impose your ideas and versions upon it. And to admit it does not mean to promote or encourage it. It means to admit it. Admit is to acknowledge, to see it really, without shades, without hindrances, without expectations. When you are able to look at anything directly, without likes, without dislikes, without bias, then the seeing is the center, then the seeing is the total. Most of us live as if we are climbing a ladder of achievement. One rung, then another rung, then another rung, then another rung, and we hope to come to the ultimate at the last rung. That is the model of our lives. Keep achieving, and in the end you will have total achievement. Some kind of finality. That model is a deeply flawed model. There is no ladder. In the rungs itself lies the summit. The summit is not after you have risen through the ladder. The summit is the ladder itself. Either you see the summit at every rung, or the summit will always be unavailable to you. The summit is there everywhere. It is there in the rung, it is there in the climber, and it is the energy that powers the climber. You will never reach the summit. It is the game of the summit that is called as the ladder and as the climber. There is no victory at the end of the game. Victory itself has powered the game. The game is the victory. Either you celebrate the game as one celebrates a victory, or you remain a perpetual loser. If you cannot be as overawed when you look at a venomous, large, slithering snake, or when you look at a flitting butterfly, as when you look at a mysterious shivling, then you do not know religion. When you are looking at that snake, your eyes must have the same respectful silence as they have when they look at the deity. When you are looking at the butterfly, your looking must be the same as it is when you read your holy book. Then you are living. Then you are really reading.
Yesterday I was in the university, the voluntary. I really enjoyed the because the whole campus I had never been there before. There were like leaves falling off, and there were birds and their voice and everything. And me along with people, we were just awed by all this. And it was no way, you're not feeling the heat as well. You were just moving from one place to another place. So I want to ask this: why? How can I see that I am not seeing pleasure in all these things? This is happening. The crushing of the leaves when you're walking through them, and the whole trees, the leaves are falling off. Then you can quickly listen to the sound of some bird there. And looking for it, it's not there. Something like this. So you are, and it was really a pleasing thing. You're continuously seeing that it's so nice, so nice, so nice.
So it's okay now. It's okay. Don't you see that the falling leaf by itself holds no value? the song of the bird by itself holds no value. It is because that it reminds you of silence that there is value in it. And when it reminds you of silence, then the song becomes extremely valuable. Pleasure is to try to seek value in the song itself without going to the basis of the song. Now you are thinking that the limited is valuable in itself. The limited is indeed valuable, but it is valuable as a gateway to the unlimited. When a messenger brings wonderful news, one hugs the messenger. Now there is nothing wonderful about the messenger as such. It is the news that he brings is important. And if the messenger is not bringing any news, who hugs him? The falling leaf is a messenger. The bird is a messenger. And that is why they are all worthy of love. The love that you accord to a human being is a reflection of the love that you have for God. And if the human being does not remind you of God, what love can you give him? Then there is only pleasure. These are the two kinds of love. One, you love someone because of himself. Other, you love someone because of what he represents. In one case, the other has become the king. I am the king. Look at my glory. Look at my face. Look at my color. Look at my body. I am the king. I deserve love because of who I am. And who am I? Flesh and blood. Who am I? My intellect. Who am I? All my physical properties and mental attributes. So, love me because of this. This is one kind of love. This is pleasure. The other love is, love me for the one I stand for. I am the messenger. Love me for my Lord. I am the gateway. Love me for the place I open up for you. You see the difference between pleasure and joy? In pleasure, the little material thing becomes valuable in itself. And if the little is being valued, the little itself is valuing. The little knows no infinity, and the little will hence know no security, no joy. What is the bird? A little bit of soil. A little game of consciousness, that's all. The bird is valuable because the bird is singing from the truth and of the truth. The song is coming from somewhere else. The lyricist is somewhere else. The little piece of flesh has been sanctified. That is why it is respectable.
So we said the victory is powering the game. So this game also involves the perpetual sense of losing. That is why I am keep on chasing the victory. So who is powering this sense of losing?
Victory itself. When you are with a loved one, let's say a kid, your own baby, Victory has already happened in being with the baby. I am with you, and that is sufficient. Now the two of you play a game, and you can deliberately go on losing because you are already a winner. Victory is powering the game. The nearness is powering the game. The nearness itself is victory. You can keep on losing now.
But the chase that is there to win.
The chase is there to win only when you do not know what the game is all about. When you do not know that victory itself is dressing up as the game, then you forget the game and chase victory. You have to first of all know what the game is. For that, you have to drop your ideas about the game. You have to drop your expectations and you have to look with clean eyes, without fear, without concepts. Look at the game. See the victory inherent there. Truth inheres even in the false. Victory inheres even in the loss.
We like hugging. It's also possession, like you want to hug it. You can't do it. But it's so hard.
Just enthusiasm. For a while. It is also driven by certain images. You might have seen the image of a saint hugging some cow, and you feel that this is the way forward. Love is not expressed in hugging or in any other thing merely.
It's not only hugging, like
Holding it or something. Would you hold a lion? So do you see how selective your holding and these things are? These are merely images. The eye must be the same. Even when the frightening lion or that slithering cobra is there, the eye must be the same. Expressions of love, they come naturally. Hugging is alright, not hugging is also alright. I'm not asking you to restrict your hugging behavior or something. You can hug a cow. And what about the bull that is chasing the cow? When you are hugging the cow, he will hug you also. So sometimes running away is also love. It's such a fascinating and rampaging and excited, supercharged bull. Run away. That is your deepest attribute to the Lord. You are paying homage to the Lord by running away from the bull. Sir, what a wonderful, magnificent thing you have made. I better run away. Sir, only you could have created something as rampaging as this thing. I better run away. Get rid of these images that you must hug in order to show your love. You cannot hug a lion. You better not try that, right? Sometimes you can. So don't take this as some kind of directive. Just as you can sometimes hug, sometimes you will have to run away. You must see the truth in both. You must see the truth in both. Otherwise, again you are getting caught in duality. Again you are choosing pleasure over pain. Again you are choosing this over running away. Hugging is alright, running away is also alright.
the image that we have, that this is a
Yes, it is the image coming from movies. That love only means hugging. When a lion chases you, show your love by running. That is love.